High commissions, getting to talk all day, and a lot of work travel when there's not a pandemic. These are just a few of the benefits of getting to work in sales. But interest in the gig has plummeted, while demand is actually higher than ever. The number of sales roles advertised on ZipRecruiter has gone up by 65% this year, with over 700,000 sales roles available in the U.S., but applications for those jobs just aren't rolling in. So here to discuss the lack of interest is Keith Wolf. He's the managing director of Murray Resources, which is a recruiting firm in Houston. Keith, welcome to Quicktake. Just give us a sense of how big the supply of these roles are. Do you have one big number that you've seen that sort of illustrates the supply of sales gigs out there?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. We're seeing just at our own firm, we have 50% more jobs than we have available applicants. So our jobs themselves, throughout the pandemic, all roles were down, and to a certain extent, they've all come back. But the one area that has come back most ferociously, I guess, is sales. As companies are looking to expand, as they're more confident in the economy, it's usually those sales jobs that come back, and that's a really great indicator of how confident and optimistic people are in their own businesses right now. So that's a positive for the whole economy. The negative is there's just not enough folks right now who are interested in the sales role. So we're fighting that battle every day.
Yeah, and that's something that I want to dig into with you, because there are a couple of different reasons why people aren't necessarily searching for a sales type role right now. And I want to talk to you about one in particular, but first we got to play a clip from the most iconic sales film of all time, Glengarry Glen Ross. So let's listen to that real quick.
You got the prospects coming in. You think they came in to get out of the rain? A guy don't walk on the lot lest he wants to buy. They're sitting out there waiting to give you their money. Are you going to take it? Are you man enough to take it?
So Keith, that final line is what I want to ask you about. He says, are you man enough to take it? And I know it's just a movie, it's from the early 90s, but I wonder if part of the issue here is that women may not think of sales as a career path that's necessarily going to be friendly for them or successful for them. What do you make of that? Have you seen that come up at all?
Maybe to a certain extent, but by the way, I love that movie. From an entertainment standpoint, I love the movie, but I hate the fact that we play that, and in fact I watched clips of it the other day, and I really enjoy it. But I do think it just prolongs this stereotype, and I don't know that it's necessarily a male-female issue. I do think there's just a misunderstanding of what sales today is, and that movie and others similar to it are part of the reason. And Hollywood's done a really great job of making the role interesting, but I think it's not exactly accurate. So, sales has really changed. I mean, it's changed over the last 10, 20 years, and really the internet is what changed it. So it used to be the seller had more information than the buyer. There was what we call information asymmetry. So the seller really held all the cards. But now with the internet, the buyer knows as much information as the seller does in many cases. They know who the competitors are. They know what the price is. So sales as a role has really evolved into pushing and pressure tactics to really being a consultant. And so people who are in sales understand that, but I still think there's a misunderstanding from outside of sales of what it really is day to day.
Really interesting. And I imagine one of the other kind of challenges for, I guess, getting the word out about what you just mentioned is that there's not necessarily like a sales track at most universities. Do you think that that's part of the issue?
I do. We're in recruiting, and we always say no one went to school to become a recruiter. And I think that's true with most salespeople as well. Now, there are some sales programs. In fact, just in our backyard here at University of Houston, there's a great sales program. In fact, it's so competitive that employers fight for those folks coming out of school. So more and more universities are coming up with sales degrees because they're learning how important it is. But just take MBA programs, for example. Most of them do not teach sales. They don't teach how to sell. They don't talk about sales as an opportunity for folks to go into. And most people don't realize that salespeople are some of the highest paid employees in an organization. It's not uncommon for them to make more than the C-suite, even CEOs in some cases. And I don't think folks really understand that as well.
Right. So for those job seekers who might be watching our show right now, what would you say to them about getting into sales and getting into the field?
Well, look at tech. I mean, that's something that's continuing to grow. There's opportunities there. If you understand the technology, or if you can teach yourself the technology, then you've got an edge up. It doesn't mean that you have to become a coder. It could mean that you are an engineer. It can mean that you understand software, just understanding it. And so there's plenty of courses you can take online to understand different technologies, to become familiar with it. And then also, be honest with yourself and understand what a sales role really is, and whether you have the grit, the persistence, the ability to take no's and rejection. And that's, part of that, there's plenty of assessments that you can do online to assess that.
Right. We talk about this on the show all the time, the idea that maybe a good way to hire is by looking at personality traits first rather than some of the other resume builders. Keith, such a great, insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Keith Wolf, Managing Director of Murray Resources.